Hey, everybody.
What's going on, everyone?
I'm Jay,
And I'm Bird Nerd Chris,
and we
and we
are
are the
the
Bird
Bird
Brains.
Brains. All right.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, I got
beautiful.
tea today. I feel very like a legitimate podcaster. I feel like a
I think
big
that
kid.
I think that would put me to sleep. Well, I mean, I guess I went the opposite direction. I've got it's pretty much like a fizz pop, or I think that's what they call them. Probably should be drinking a bunch of caffeine right before bedtime, but
Yeah, this is sleepy
yeah.
time tea, in fact. So by the
Oh,
end of this,
nice.
if I nod off, you just
I
finish the episode and we'll be good.
love it.
I feel like all I'm picturing is like a one of those nighttime videos where there's like a British lady like softly reading a
Oh yeah.
story to help you fall
Yep.
asleep.
A
I
little
feel like
nursery rhyme in the
yeah, I
background.
feel like they drink tea, so I should drink tea. It
Well,
keeps the voice angelic.
I'll keep you awake and on your toes tonight. So
There
I'll
you
I'll be
go.
I'll be bouncing around with all my caffeine. So
Yeah, we'll even each other out. People will be like, "Man, Chris was really going this
I'm
episode."
really hyper today.
Yeah. All right, so today we're going to talk about economy of birds, and what does that mean to you, Chris?
Oh man, it's it's a whole range of things. I think of economy of birds. You think of what's popular, what's in demand. Uh, what you have in one place may not be what you have in another place. Prices of birds, and I think a lot of things that go into effect of that is many many things outside of the bird itself, right? Prices of seed, cages, the things that go into bird keeping. I think a lot of that, and it's different throughout the world, right? You got countries that have easier access to certain species of birds and others not so much, right? And I think we're feeling that big pinch these last year and a half here in the United States with, pretty much not bringing in any more African imports, right? African species, which has impacted, a lot of those prices and sales of birds and access to those birds. But, I think it's a big range of things. All around, not just the bird itself. But what are your thoughts, Jay? What do you think of that when you think of economy of birds?
Yeah, I think of that. I like to think that I have like kind of a pretty good finger on the pulse of bird pricing. But yeah, there is more to it than that. You get into like kind of like what you're hinting at there is regulation. So, if you can import birds that are wild caught, they're not going to be that expensive, but you really can't do that anymore. So now you're bringing in birds from Europe that cost a lot more than the domestic bred birds. And then, like you just said, when you can't import anymore, well, then you've got to make them here, and then you'll start to see species either disappear or become more rare. And different birds are very valuable in different places and not as valuable because they're more common other places. Like I know, so I have two pairs of orange-cheeked waxbills, and I posted some video about my waxbills, and Tony Arnold messaged me. He goes, "Man, I'd love to try those someday." And he's, got way more species, way more birds than I. And I said, "You don't have orange-cheeked waxbills?" He goes, "Nah, mate. They're $3,000 a pair."
Yeah,
And I was like, "What?" I was like, "Because I mean, I've gotten some relatively recently for $30 for a pair, which like last year or the
yeah,
year before maybe, and it was just like crazy to me that he's talking 100x that. But yeah, they can't bring them into Australia very easily, and there aren't that many there, and that makes them really expensive.
yeah.
On the flip side, the Gouldians in Australia, even though they can't get wild caught ones, they're $50 Australian for a pair. I saw recently on like a YouTube video, which I think US is like less than $100
Hmm.
for a pair of Gouldians, and I was like, man, I haven't seen those prices in 20 years.
Right. I was gonna say maybe in your parts. I don't know where I'm from. I haven't
No,
seen
and
those prices in a long time.
stick around because one of the things we're going to do today is we're going to do a little quiz and sort of compare pricing for some bird species where Chris lives in Utah, where I live in South Alabama near Florida, because even in just within the United States, pricing's different depending on what's
Yeah,
available in your area. Shipping birds is hard. A lot
right.
of people won't do it, don't want to mess with it. So something that's common in Utah or California, kind of your western region,
Yeah.
maybe I don't have them or vice versa. So I'll be interested to see pricing, what's different between the two of us.
Yeah, and and we won't get into details yet, but I think I put Utah kind of more in, even though we're more on the western part of the United States, we're on the west side of the Rockies, but I kind of put Utah in with the central group of states, the central and the northern group of states within the United States, just due to similarities in climate, right? And weather patterns, we get really cold temperatures, really hot summers, um, and that puts a big impact on especially breeding birds. And there's not a whole lot within that middle range of United States, a whole lot of really popular big breeders that are breeding, multiple species of birds at the same time, finches or hookbills, right? And so it definitely puts a crunch or a little bit of a strain on the availability of those birds. And you find yourself reaching out to the California states or the Texas states or Florida, Alabama, Georgia states, that
Right.
tend to
The
have
big
better
cities. Yeah.
climates, yeah, and better environments to be able to breed birds like that. But yeah, it's definitely unique.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, I mean, maybe that's a good thing to talk about too. I mean, we've said it in previous episodes, but in the United States, which I think a lot of, if you're not from here and you've never been here, you don't realize how big the United States is. Like when we talk about each state, each of our states is roughly the size of a whole country in Europe. So
Yeah,
to to get from, my house to Chris's house, which neither one of us lives on the ends, right? We're talking, several thousand kilometers. So
yeah,
these are not all right next to each other, but you've got sort of South Florida is a big hub. New York City is a big hub. There's some good birds in Texas and Arizona, and then really California. And that there is kind of a spot in the middle, which you and I are kind of on opposite corners of that,
yeah,
where there aren't very many big breeders. And you're right about that. And if you are one and we don't know about you, please reach out. We would like to
yeah,
know.
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
let's network and get in touch for sure.
Yeah. So speaking of breeders, vice pet stores and the whole thing, so wholesale versus retail. So let's talk about that because I get this kind of is where you get into, had multiple people say to me, I need some extra cash. I'm going to breed birds and make money that way. And I have to have
Yeah,
this conversation with
and
them. So
and
do
then
you,
it drives you to drink some caffeine at night, is what that does.
right, there you go. So do you ever sell to pet stores or you sell all to people?
Um, I kind of have a tiered ranking of where my birds go. So I do have a breeders list, and more so in these last 2 years, I've had quite a few different breeders reach out to me, and I put them on a list and let them know when certain birds or species become available. So that's my primary list, and I tend to try and give those breeders a better price, to be honest with you,
Hmm.
because I know that they're passionate about it and they want to, they're interested in the birds, and I want them to go to a good home, good environment.
Yeah, I do the
And
same
then
thing.
locally here in Utah, we've got it I guess you could say it's like, from those in the United States, it's like a Craigslist, but it's just local to Utah. And I think Idaho, Nevada can tap into it, but it's just like a local website where people can post things, and they've got a pretty big bird section there. So if I have anything extra, I'll post there, and then if I have anything remaining after that, I do reach out. So I've got a couple local pet stores that do a pretty good job with their animals and keeping, but they're, to be honest with you, they're my last resort. I try to get in touch with, with breeders and local people, as a first source, and then pet stores as a last. So what about you,
Yeah,
Gary?
I tend to be like species specific on who I want to sell where.
Yeah,
So for instance, I mean, especially zebras and societies, not rare. for me by any means in this area. So I sell a lot of those types of birds, spice finches to, um, I've got Rondas to the east of me in Pensacola, and then I've got Royal Avian to the west of me in Slidell. So like budgies, the more common birds, the more specialized birds I either tend to trade for other
Yeah.
expensive birds I want,
Hmm.
or sell them because the more rare birds you can get, I can get more money, which feeds back into the hobby, selling them
Yeah.
to another person than I can. Because if I sell to a bird store, I usually am going to sell for about half or two-thirds of
Hmm.
what I would get from another person.
Yep.
And in some cases, it makes more sense. I make more zebra finches than I could sell. Um, so it's easy just to say, let's just move them on. And also, I think those birds are probably a lot of people are first timers.
Yeah.
And so I think they're less likely, like they're going to just Google birds for sale, find this pet store and go to it than they are to find me
Yeah.
without a website.
Yeah.
You kind of got to know, you got to be a little bit into the bird world to really find me, I think.
Yeah. And I think, you know, like you said before, Jay, you're not going to make money on it. Especially if you really truly want to take care of your birds. I mean, you're buying medications, you're buying different types of egg foods and different products to make sure that your birds are healthy. You're dropping thousands of dollars like I did this last year building this huge aviary, right?
Yeah.
And I just did it all myself. If I were to contract it out, it would have been twice, three times the price, you know. Um, you're really not going to make money, but I've tried to set my birds up, in a way to where I can try to get them to pay for themselves and manage themselves. And I've got my birds kind of tiered differently. I've got my once in a lifetime birds, right? The ones that are harder to breed, harder to find. Your parrot finches. I've got my scarlet breasted parakeets, which in these parts, I think there's only two other breeders in Utah that I know of that even have these species, right?
Right.
They're the ones that they're they're the prized birds, and I've got a big wait list for them. And then I've got my mid group of birds that are your Goulians, your canaries, your pretty, colorful birds that are easier to breed, but aren't as common. Trying to get different types of mutations or things like that. And those ones are great for trading. I usually get enough babies to try and trade for different species that I want and whatnot. And then, like you said, I've got the zebra finches and the society finches, and I kind of label them as they're my bird seed birds, right? Because
Yeah, that's how I
I
think
get
of it
enough
too.
babies that I sell locally and or to pet stores that they bring in enough income that I can provide at least the seed and the egg food to replenish and whatnot. And so kind of have it as a tiered and set up that way. But yeah, it's you're not going to make money, but you can set it up in a way to hopefully sustain itself to some extent. And there's going to be heartaches, and you're going to have years that you kick butt, and you're going to have years that the bursts don't do as good for you. I mean, I think that's just natural. It's not because you care for them differently. It's just different circumstances hit, whatever. But yeah, I think that's what also makes it fun as well, and a challenging hobby to for sure.
Yeah, I'm having a slow start. I've got some birds on eggs, and I've only had my nest boxes in a week. But like last year, this time, I think I had probably 15 pairs on eggs, and I think right now I've got maybe five. And I think it's just the weather. I think it's a little cooler than it was this time last year. And, I don't know what else. We've had more rainy days, so it's been more cloudy, less sunny. Maybe that's it. But yeah, if I'm breaking even on like seed and supplies, then I feel like I'm doing great. I don't think I'll
Right.
ever recoup like aviary build costs. So I
No.
just I just see that as like a sunk cost, and then you try
We
to.
write it off for taxes. That's what we do.
There you go. Yeah, I need to. I've been thinking about doing. Maybe we'll do an episode on that someday because I need
Yeah.
to get like an LLC and just
Uh-huh.
because I'm this business is making no money. So it'd be
Right.
nice if I could tell Uncle Sam I'm a terrible bird breeder. Um, yeah, so Um, you mentioned that local website. I also, I was on, my friend Alex sent me a link for some Cape Doves, which, by the way, if anyone has any Cape Doves, sort of on the radar, I really might
Nice.
want some Cape
That'd be
Doves.
cool.
But
That'd be cool.
um, he lives kind of close to LA, and he sent me LA Craigslist. And there are a ton of birds, like
Yeah.
good birds on LA
Hmm.
Craigslist. And Craigslist near me, there it is nothing but chickens.
Yeah.
You might get
Chickens or zebra finches. That's about all
right,
you
you
get.
might get a few zebra finches, but so it was very interesting to me. So, I always tell people like don't go to Craigslist. I don't advertise on Craigslist because it's a waste of time because I find that I just get 100 door, or tire kickers and then they leave. But in LA, seems like Craigslist is a good place to find birds. For me, the best way to do it if I'm going to sell them myself is either just directly on my socials or there's a couple of Facebook groups that are like either local or semi-local, which
Nice.
because I'm down there in the bottom of Alabama, I can be in Mississippi or Florida in like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So I try to do the Alabama group, the Mississippi group, the Florida group, and then sometimes like the Georgia group I'll get into. But what about you? Is it those local, how are people finding you, those local classifieds?
Yeah, yeah, I think the local classifieds for sure, especially for a lot of the beginner breeders, but like I said, lately, the last year and a half, social media, Facebook, I've been trying to post more and more consistently on there and really share the babies and the different species that I'm breeding. And I've had quite a few people reach out. In fact, I've got a lady coming from Colorado next month to come get some birds and some Bourkes from me. And so really, I think the social media piece has really hit. And then the last 2 years, I've tried to, so they've had a few different bird events. So I've tried to once a year for the last 2 years. I'll go to California. They have a pretty big bird expo and they really travel the whole state month to month. But when it's in
Yeah,
LA,
Florida has that. Yeah.
yeah, when it's in LA, that's usually when I'll try and go because that's pretty much the closest that they have to where I live and reach out to a lot of bird breeders there and get their contact information. And then we're usually, either trading birds or, just in talks that way. And then also breeders from Arizona and Nevada area, Las Vegas area. I've been able to get some better contacts with them. But yeah, really the Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, that's been big these last couple of years and probably my main source of outreach outside of the state of Utah. And then I would say that inside of the state of Utah, I've been doing it so long that all of the bird breeders, we've got a couple local, bird sites and they do a couple
And
competitions,
they
like
know
bird
you.
competitions each year, within the
Yeah.
state. Yeah, and we all know each other. We all know what birds we have, and always are texting back and forth and trading birds throughout the year and whatnot. And so that's been really nice. And then slowly people just kind of trickle in, or I'll get a text or a phone call saying, "Hey, so and so, this bird breeder referred me to you," and so we just kind of get this little web, and it just seems to continue to expand and expand, year to year as we get to know each other and slowly are reaching out to other people and bringing them into the circle. So
Yeah, I've had people reach out like to me trying to get to you for Borks especially.
I've got a
People and
lot
it's
of
like, well, like I do too. And people are like, "Hey, can Chris get me a Bork or can you help me get in touch with him?" I'm like, "Well, what are you looking for?" Because like I might be able to help you too. But how many pairs of
Yeah.
Borks do you have right now?
So breeding pairs, I've got one, two, three, four pairs of breeding Borks,
Yeah, so
and
that's more
and
than
then
me.
currently I've got seven Borks, both like Lutino, Rubino, Wild Type, Opal, Rosie, for sale. And I think probably the one thing, Jay, that's held me back a little bit more is I've never shipped birds before. To be honest with you, it scares me. And you're going to be my first guinea pig, right? As soon as the weather, starts to cooperate and warm
I'm
up here in
checking
Utah.
yours every day. It's killing me.
I know you're
Every time I
you're
look, I
sending me
start to
the
get
updates
excited and then
of
I
my
get
weather.
sad. Yeah.
Last week was really nice. I thought about it. I'm like, do we chance it? But and then woke up to snow this morning. But so that's something that I would like to expand upon. And I think once I can get to that point, then that really opens up the market, right? At least within the United States, to where I can ship birds. I've got people reaching from across the U.S. asking for birds, but I just currently don't ship. But that is something that I do want to look into and expand here in the next year or two, and then really expand that outreach to other breeders.
Yeah, and different birds ship differently. I think Borks in particular, I think you're making a lot of Borks. I think they ship a lot easier than like a small African waxbill.
Yeah.
If you and I were trading Borks, I'd probably just say, look, it's going to be above 40, pull the trigger.
Yeah.
For the little finches, I want to see it a little bit warmer than that. But
Right.
Borks ship pretty well. I haven't had an
Yeah.
issue, and I've shipped a
That's
lot of them.
awesome. Love
Yeah.
to hear that. That's good.
All right. So let's do a little test here. So let's go back and forth. I'm going to ask you the price of a bird species, and you tell me what they cost in Utah. So,
Okay.
and I guess you got to specify color morph if you're going to ask.
Yeah.
And then I need two answers per species. I need wholesale and retail if
Okay.
you ever wholesale them. All right, so
Oh,
society finches. Let's start there. That's an easy one.
okay. Yeah. And I'm just looking at my notes here. Society finches. So wholesale. If any of your pied society finches, your really common one, wholesale is like $5 to $10 a bird. Um, if you're looking at like pet store prices or some other breeder prices for the same pied mutations, you're looking probably $15 to $20 a bird. When you get into the more rare mutations like your self European society finches, things like that, usually they're going up to about $50 a bird for the wholesale prices, $40 to $50 a bird, and then pet stores or other breeders that are selling on the market, you're probably $50 to $75 a bird. So
Really? Okay, wow.
yeah,
Yeah, so for me in Alabama, I'm seeing wholesale for, yeah, like pretty much anything, really all societies. Cresteds, you might could get a little bit more, but $8 to $10 a bird. And
yeah,
then um, in a retail, so like I'm somewhere between me personally, I'm somewhere between 25 and 35, 40 a bird, depending on if it's
okay,
crested or normal or whatever. And then, I mean, PetSmart next to my house is selling them for $50, just a regular
yeah,
pied society finch all day
yeah,
long,
yeah.
which is kind of mind blowing.
hmm
All
Yeah,
right,
it's crazy.
your
Okay,
turn.
all right, I'm looking at my list here. We'll take it up a notch, but still a popular bird. So let's do the Gouldian finches. And obviously we've got more color mutations there. Let's do your normal wild type, and then let's just take it to like the yellowbacks and
Okay.
maybe bluebacks if you want to squeeze it in there. But yeah,
Okay, so wholesale for a greenback, I'm getting 85 pretty consistently, and I'm getting 125 retail, which a year ago I would have told you 120. I'm up to 125 now for a greenback. For a yellow, um, probably 100 to 130, 100 wholesale, 130 retail. And then for bluebacks that are so rare, probably, and I've kept bluebacks in the past. I don't keep any right now, but probably 150 to 200. So 150 wholesale, 200 retail. And I've seen them as high as, I mean, I've seen regular greenbacks in Atlanta that are totally like bad genetics, like the size of like a
yeah,
gold-breasted waxbill for 200 a bird.
yeah,
So Gouldians, I think, are the very bottom of you can kind of get what you ask for within reason.
right,
Probably selling them cheaper than I should, but I've no problem getting 125 all day long. And I think
yeah,
for a blue in the right buyer, you could probably do 250.
yeah.
Yeah. What about you in Utah?
I that we're actually my prices are actually pretty similar to that, Jay. I think the hard part with Utah is they're just not as many of them, right? So when there are some that become available. They are a little bit more expensive, so probably just your normal greenbacks. Um, I I put the wholesale around that $75 to $90 range within the greenbacks. If I've got some pretty decent genetics and European genetics, so they've got really good size and whatnot to them. Um, I don't think anybody else sells them wholesale because they just don't have enough of them to
Yeah.
even sell wholesale. But
Right.
retail, you're probably looking at about for your greenbacks consistently probably around 135 to $145 for the greenbacks. And then your yellows and your blue. I don't think there's anybody in the state that has bluebacks, to be honest with you. Um, I've got a few that are split to bluebacks. I used to have some in the past, but when
Yeah,
I
you've had
did
them
have
before.
those, when I did have those, I was selling them for about $200 a bird um, back then. Now, it wouldn't surprise me if they're close to $300 a bird locally, just because they're so hard to find. But when I go to like the California marts, I'm looking about 100 to 125 for the greenbacks that they're selling at the marts, and then your yellows and your blues are close to between 175 and 200 ish for the birds, but for the bluebacks
Which
and greenback
is,
or yellow.
I've got a yellow. I've got a great yellow male. So actually, some of the birds coming to you, four of the birds coming to you are split to yellow.
Sweet.
But
Okay.
that makes
To
me
you too.
sad. That makes me sad because I really remember like when I started, the first expensive finch I ever bought was a Gouldian, and it was I got a yellow back, purple breasted, red-headed male, and he was $75. And I was
Nice.
getting greenbacks for 50, and I mean that was a lot of money to me back in like 2009, 10.
Right.
But still, like, so we're double that. We're
Yeah.
double that in a decade.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild.
It's crazy. It's just, yeah, it's sad, to be honest with you. I mean, but I understand that you've got inflation and everything else is more expensive, right? It's just more expensive to keep anything in general, let out even outside of the world of birds. But yeah, it's hard to find good prices anymore. And we've got a few local breeders that we trade, right? And that's where we've gotten some pretty cool colors and things like that. And I think we've been really fair. But yeah, when you're straight up buying, they're a lot more expensive than they were in the past, and we're more expensive than you guys are generally, right? In at any
Yeah.
time of the year for some of these species.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. All right, so my turn again, I guess. You had
Yeah,
just asked me Gouldian. So let's go. What is a spice finch running out in Utah these days?
nice. Yeah, spice finches. The last time I've seen a spice finch for sale was a year ago. Um,
Wow,
They
okay.
used to be really common, and then since they've kind of cracked down on the imports, uh, really the last year and a half, I've seen very few African species for sale anywhere, on our local sites, pet stores. Um, when they were popular, spice finches, we were buying about $25 a bird. Um, and they used to have the little bronze wing mannequins. Haven't seen those
Yeah.
for several years, but pet stores would be selling those for like 20 to $30 a bird, and the breeders were selling them for like 15 to 25. But yeah, spice finches, we're looking like $25 a bird. I have never, actually, that's a lie. I've owned four in my life, and that was about 15 years ago. And before I was married, and I was still living at home with my parents. I
Mhm.
loved them, thought they were really cool. Never could do anything with them. I don't know if I just had all
Yeah,
four males or
no,
what, but
we've talked about that before. They are hard to breed.
yeah. And so I ended up selling them, and I think I'd sold them for like $20 a bird when I did sell them. But yeah, right now they probably would go for about $50 a bird, just because not very many people have them. 40 to $50 a bird is probably what we're looking at.
I need to send you some and make
Yeah,
some
man.
money.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, so they're still around here, and I mean, there's a bunch of Ronda's aviary right now that I bred late last year. If anyone's looking in my area,
Nice.
and I think she's selling them for $30 a bird. And then, I mean, Pet Supplies Plus, like the big chain. near my across the bay, but near my house was selling. I think they were selling for 35 a couple years back. They are probably getting more rare. I think really all the bird species are getting more rare. I was on that live stream we were talking about the other night, and I'm so I'm in my early 30s. I only really know one guy, maybe two, that are doing this that are younger than me.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if I don't know if we track it at all. I don't think there is a way to track it, but I wonder how many people are doing the finch thing. Maybe it's just dying out, which I hope
Yeah.
not, because
Yeah.
I'd like the economy of birds to grow and not shrink.
Right.
And I mean, I say that, then again, I go on Reddit and there's five new people every day. Hey, I just got two zebra finches. Now what? Are these boys or
Yeah.
girls?
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean,
Well,
so I think
I
anyway for spice finches, 15 wholesale, 30 retail,
I
probably.
like that, and I've noticed that too, Jay. I think we're at least our style. The big aviaries, multiple species.
Mm.
It's not as popular in our younger generations, but I do see quite a few people reach out to me, and especially for like the zebra finches, saying, hey, I want to jump into birds. And I said, great, zebra finch is a great starter bird. And they usually fall in love. It's like you had mentioned, I think it was our last podcast, when people come in your backyard, they see the aviary and they're like, oh man, this is awesome. People do that all the time, and they see that, and then I think they start that passion or start to fall in love. But yeah, it's different times. I don't think there's as many younger generations with the big aviaries, multiple species that they're trying to breed, things like that. It's getting a little bit more rare, I guess you could say. But
Well, you've
okay.
got you've got four kids and I've got three, so that's seven more bird keepers, hopefully.
Yeah, there you go. All
So,
right, okay. I think it's my turn.
yeah.
So we're gonna go with the small, and we're gonna jump into the world of wax bill. So orange cheeks, gold breast, cordon blues. We'll do kind of the more common ones, because I know some of the other wax bills, like your, purple grenadiers, things like that, are really rare and probably super expensive. But let's do
Yeah.
that. Let's do the orange cheeks, gold breast, cordon blues, and kind of price ranges that you see there.
Yeah, so the orange cheeks, wholesale 25, retail 50 or thereabouts, 40, 50. You might get them on sale for 30. And I think they fall, which by the way, they're an awesome bird. They fall, sometimes they get looped into that dull bird syndrome that we talk about sometimes, but they have um, really cool personalities. They bing around the cage and they knock their tail back and forth all the time. They're great to watch. They have a pretty little song, and they have some of the strongest pair bond, if not the strongest pair bond I've ever seen in any finch. I mean, they
Awesome.
spend probably 20% of their day just sitting next to each other on the perch. So they're also harder to sex, and they're very difficult to breed. I've gotten them to lay eggs. I haven't gotten them to make any babies. So um, I would say, I guess that somebody's breeding them because they're still cheap and they're not being imported. So I don't know, but I'm not breeding them.
Yeah.
Gold breasts is another one that I've seen the price go way up on. Not as bad as the cordon bleus, which we'll talk about next, but I think wholesale for a gold breast maybe 60 and retail 90 to 100, which they used to be $50 all day long too,
Yeah.
45, 50. And then cordon bleus have gone through the roof. Which they're really hard to breed. They're a combination of two things. They're really hard to breed and they're really pretty.
Yeah.
So a lot of people really want them, and a lot of people are not breeding them even though they own them.
Right.
So I'd say wholesale nowadays, within the last 2 years, probably 100, and retail 150 to 200 is what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
And that's if you can find one. And usually, realistically, I think the firefinches, my red-billed firefinches, are the same way. I'm helping my friend Alex find some hens so that he can breed some and add them to our gene pool.
Nice.
But it's not even it's not cash at all. Most people
Right.
I know, and I'm pretty confident I have the only hen in Alabama. But I know like there's a guy up in North Alabama near Birmingham. I've been trying to give me a spare cockbird he has, and he just won't. I said, "What do I
Yeah.
have to trade you?" And and then he says, "Well, I really want your hen. How much for your hen?" And I said, no, So
Yeah.
that's a problem, right? We need
Right.
to be able to breed birds, but so somebody's got to give up their ego. And, I would say I'm producing more, so I should be the one getting the bird from the guy who isn't. But don't get me
Right.
started on that. If you're listening, you know who you are. We got to talk. But, um, yeah, I mean, the wax bills, especially the more rare wax bills, have just started to go through the roof because there just aren't that many. And they are being imported from Europe, but the
Yeah.
price, like a pair of blue caps or red cheeks from Europe, minimum
So
eight
expensive.
hundred dollars a
Jeez.
pair plus shipping, so $1,000 a pair.
That's just
And
ridiculous.
they've got to go through that USDA quarantine for 30 days. They might die. So you really need to buy multiple pairs to ensure that you get a pair. So thousands of dollars a pair
Yeah.
for a bird that a red cheek cordon bleu, 40, $50 all day long 15 years ago. But, '07 is when African imports stopped. And since then, they just, their numbers are dwindling. And, I still haven't seen a blue cap in person. I know people in the US that have imported blue caps and have blue caps. I've seen videos of their blue caps, like Tina Billings out in Washington State, but
Hmm.
she sold maybe she doesn't want people to know this, but she sold a horse to be able to pay for bird imports. So you think trading birds for birds is intense. She
Right.
sold a horse to buy birds. So like you want to talk about expensive birds. I mean, if you're paying for them by the ounce, right?
Right.
They're 1,000 times the price of gold, or something like that because they don't weigh an ounce.
So I had the one time, and this was, oh, geez, it's probably about 8 or 9 years ago. I shipped in, and um, yeah, I shipped in a pair of blue cap cordon bleus.
Oh, you had blue caps? I didn't know this.
So I've done red cheek cordon bleus, and I had a pair of blue cap. Well, I say I had a pair. Um, Shipped it in, and on day two, the male died. It was like it was like gut wrenching. I was like, and and it thankfully I did get it there. It was from a place in Washington. It wasn't from Tina. It was like a pet place, and my brother went in on it with me. He got a pair as well, and we brought him in. My male died after 2 days, and I was like, this is stupid. So I just sent my female to my brother because he had the pair, and he got them to hatch chicks out 3 separate times, but could never get them to the perch. They didn't matter how much live food he was feeding them. I mean, they were just really difficult, and we couldn't get the society finches to really take them on. But I have bred red cap or red cheeked cordon bleus before, but yeah, the blue cap. I mean, it was gorgeous, man. The males, they truly are beautiful birds. If I could get a pair, I would jump on it in a heartbeat. But they're so hard to find now. But yeah, it was kind of a punch to the stomach. On day two, the male dies, and I'm like, and they're like, it's like a no returns, no refunds,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
just ate the cost, and I was like, this is stupid.
If the bird
So.
shows up dead, congrats, you got a dead bird. Yeah.
Right, yeah. So it was kind of
Right.
crappy.
And so I had red cheeks until last year, and my friend Michael, who does listen to these, so hey, Michael, he is very experienced hookbill breeder. He's got like farm animals. He's doing like Muscovy ducks and all kinds of cool stuff.
Nice.
And he basically, we decided he had some birds I was looking for, and I had some extra red cheeks and wasn't doing well with them. They just weren't breeding for me. And, I'd get the dance on the stick and everything
Yeah.
and nothing. And he really wants to focus on those. So I ended up sending all my red cheeks to him. And then he had a firefinch. I think I got his firefinch. So, and I've basically, I had to kind of decide, do I want to do red cheeks or do I want to do the
Yeah.
firefinches? I like the
Right.
firefinches more. So it's one of those things where I basically decided to focus my one African species for now that I'm really going to try to save is the red-billed firefinches.
Yeah.
So he's got, I think well, he probably doesn't want me to say how many birds he's got, but um, because it is, he gets offered all the time, huge, somebody offered him like 2 grand for a pair
Wow.
of red cheeks. He said no. Um, so don't rob him. He doesn't have the money. But um, yeah, I mean, it's the wax bills now are really, they're getting pricier by the day, and
Yeah, for
I
sure.
don't think I'd sell a Firefinch to somebody for less than 250 at this point, probably. And that's if I had a spare to sell you, which I
Right.
probably don't.
Yeah.
Mine are
No,
kind of spoken for.
I love the wax bills. They're just in general. I love how small they are. I love the different colors, and it's like the intensity of their colors. You've got the Senegal fire finches, like the males, their red is such a deep red, and then you get them in the sun, and like they're beautiful. Your cordon bleus are beautiful. Even your orange cheek wax bills that just have a dash of orange on their face and on their bottoms of their tails or their rumps. It's like they're still really cool and pretty birds. They're
When
just
they're
hard
in
to
good
breed, man.
feather, when they're in good feather, I mean, easily my red bills rival a Gouldian. I mean, not
Right,
as many colors, but easily in that same thing. Yeah, they're just hard to breed. That's right. And you look at guys that are doing it right. Like I see like Tony and like Burns aviaries down in Australia that are breeding them well,
yep,
but they live in like the Australian outback, and they just
yeah.
go like whack down a whole 10 foot tall
Yeah,
termite mound,
yep. Just
and
feeding
they're putting
termites
like
from the
a
wild.
1,000 pounds of termites in this aviary to feed these, and the birds are like, and I think it's termites specifically. And
Right.
I'm at my house. I can't bring 1,000 termites here. I'll lose my
Yeah.
homeowner's insurance.
Uh,
So
alls I have here are ants. It's like,
right,
and the
right.
birds don't want ants.
So mine will eat mealworms, and
Yeah.
that's mealworms and fly larvae are what's bringing out my red cheek or my red-billed firefinches now. So they'll do it, but they are, I think, of the African species that we've just talked about, I think they are the easiest to breed, and by no
Right.
means are they easy,
Right.
but they are the easiest. And I'm still, like I said, basically, if I was going to build like a second aviary that only had one species, it would be for the firefinches because they're
Right.
still really tough to breed. They've got to be comfortable. I still haven't mastered it yet. I'm not ready to write that book or do that podcast, right?
Yeah,
But all
for
right,
sure,
let's
man.
do one more.
Okay. All right. Let's see here. We're gonna stick to the Africans. Actually, is it your turn? I think it's your turn. I
Yeah, I
just
think it
asked the
is my
wax
turn.
bills. Yeah. All right.
So no, I'll go off of that. I'll go to, let's do a hook bill here. So for the I won't do your expensive ones, your scarlets. What is a uh let's do Borks. What are
All
some
right.
of the give me a couple different color mutations.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are you seeing?
Yeah. So for the Borks, you've got your wild type, and they've got some pink on the breast, and then it's a lot more, browns and dark blacks and grays, on the backs of them. I actually still think they're really
Yeah,
pretty
the
birds.
blue, they've got that
And they've got
blue
that stripe of blue on their feather, and the
the
male is
blue
up on
armpit.
top, and
Yeah.
um, you know, your normal wild types, we're usually can buy them anywhere from 100 to $120 a bird, and then I usually wholesale mine about 75 a bird for the wild types. And then you've got I'll put the rosy borks and your opal borks, kind of in the same category. They're roughly the all pink birds, right? The all pink rosies. Those are a little bit more expensive, so usually you're about 125 to 135 a bird. I usually wholesale mine for about 100. And then you've got like your lutinos and your rubinos. So they're the nice dark yellows and pinks. So usually their wings are yellow, and then their belly is pink, and then on the rubinos their back is pink all the way down to their tail. Um, those ones are a little bit more expensive, so usually about 175 to $200 a bird is what you're looking at. I usually sell mine for 150, 175, depending on where they're going and who I'm selling to. But Yeah, so that's usually about the Borks. Again, harder to find. I've bred quite a few and I'm starting to spread out at least the genetics that I have through, and I've brought in a few different types of Borks from California and whatnot. But so there's a few more people that have them in Utah and the surrounding areas. Great birds. But yeah, those are probably about the prices that we're seeing right now in my area.
They're a little less rare for you than they are here. So we're yeah for a normal wholesale 75, 80. For a normal retail 125 probably all day long. But then when you get into rosies, 200 to 250.
Wow.
And then I've never even seen a Latino or Rubino except on video, but I think 300 probably all day long.
What do you want one, man? I've got like four extra babies.
Yeah, no, I no, I mean I do. So most of my birds I do have two breeding pairs, so I can make pairs, and I've only got the one pair of Borks, and I think it's because I was burned so badly by my male being mean.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I'd
That's
love to have
unique
a
for
pair that
sure.
I could keep in the aviary. But the babies haven't been mean. Like I've got one of my babies that I'm waiting to going to my friend Angela out in Kansas. When same problem we're having with you, weather.
Yep.
Um, but that baby's fine. Doesn't bother the finches at all. It's just like just the dad is a jerk. His
Yeah.
name's Lou. Lou. He's like an old Italian teamster or something.
Who's got some issues?
But yeah, so I do need to get another pair so I can make pairs. So maybe eventually we'll do that. I don't have a place to put them right
Yeah.
now. I guess I think of it that way, but I guess if I had nice boards, they could just live in the aviary, and that's where
I
I'd
was
put
gonna, I
them.
was gonna say, so all of my Borks, I mean, if you guys follow my YouTube channel, my last two clutches of Borks that I've had, they shared a nest with my society finches. They both raised chicks in the same nest at the same time, and we're absolutely fine. All of my pairs of Borks I've bred in a colony setting with my other finches. So generally, they're great birds. If you want a little bit bigger bird and a hookbill, they're great to put with your finch species. Just don't buy Lou from Jay, because he'll
He's
beat them up.
very for sale. No, I'm gonna keep him. He's a good father. I mean, they're making babies. He's just not a
Yeah.
social bird. Um, yeah, if he, I shudder to think what would happen if a society tried to get in with it would be all aboard the murder train.
I bet.
Yeah. All right. So let's wrap this one up here. So, a couple podcasts ago, we did a thing, comment, share, and we get some merch going your way. So Charles Cole, he wrote in, he shared the podcast, including to some like local Facebook groups. He said, "So Charles, we really appreciate you.
Thanks,
Please
man.
shoot me a DM and we'll get your info for some merch coming your way." And he had
Yeah,
a
here,
question.
coming right to
Yeah,
you, dude.
we'll get a coffee mug headed your way here. You can join us for some tea. I'll put a little tea bag in there too.
Yeah, there you go.
Um, but he had a question, and so we'll do this, and we'll talk about where to find us, and we'll get out of here. What is your favorite species mating ritual? So what bird do you like to see the mating ritual the most?
Oh man, you want me to take this one first?
Yeah, you go first.
Okay. Sticking to the finch species. Oh man, there's quite a few that I like. In general, I really like the African mating rituals. I love the males holding up the long feather or grass, and they're jumping up and down, looking all goofy
Yeah,
and comical. And I would probably say close to would be the Gouldian finch. I think it's super funny watching them shake their heads back and forth, and even the females get into it at times, and it's like this weird little clown dance going back and forth. You
yeah.
can't
I
really hear their
posted it the other
songs as
day.
well. Yeah, you did, man. And your male
Yeah,
was super
I was
happy.
walking in the aviary and they were doing it. I was like, yeah, I was
Oh
like,
man.
my sister was like, I don't think you can post that. I was like, oh, I'm posting it. It's gonna go viral, and it did. It
Yeah.
got 5,000 views in a day.
Are you serious? That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, I knew it would. The minute I got it, I
Yeah.
texted my family the video ahead of time and said, "Wahoo!" And they're like, "Oh, for more Gouldians?" I was like, "Well, yeah, that, but also like this video is gonna go good."
Yeah, yeah. So I think those are probably my two. I like the dancing and holding the stuff in their
Hmm.
beaks and the shaking their heads back and forth. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'd say Gouldians are up there for me, but I think I'll say this. I think Spice Finches for me.
Yeah,
Also
okay.
hard to breed, but they have like an ultrasonic song, so you
Yeah,
almost feel it on your eardrum more than you actually hear it. And they do a really long song. Like it's 30, if they do a full song, it's over 30 seconds. And it's
yeah.
a bunch of different, it's really, really intricate. It's like almost a whole sheet of music, it seems like. And he's moving up and down and
Mm-hmm.
side to side, and all the other males will typically come and watch.
See, so I
So
think that's the cool part is everyone else like joins in, like, man, what are you saying? Like they're trying to
yeah,
learn
and
from them, and then they compete.
so I really like that. I like seeing it's almost like a concert, so that those would be my favorites as well.
I love
All
that.
right,
I think those
so
are awesome.
where can people find you on socials, Chris?
All right, so Bird Nerd for Facebook and YouTube, and then Bird Nerd 4 for Instagram. So uh, hit that subscribe button, posting videos weekly, posting the podcasts, and then separate videos from my aviary that I have here. And so yeah, reach out to me and hopefully keep the subscribes going and the videos flowing you guys' way. So
Yeah, same here. Trying to post one podcast and one JVary video a week right now. I don't have quite the YouTube following that you do, but we're working on it.
oh man, you're getting up there. You're getting some good following. So
Yeah, I'm getting close. I'm getting close. So I'm on Instagram, and I'm the underscore Javieri on same on Facebook, I believe, or close to it. And if you can find my Instagram, they're all linked in there. And then YouTube, just the Javieri. And then I'm on Reddit, same name. I'm on Threads. If you actually reach out to me on Threads, I may or may not see it. Threads is terrible. Um, and I think that's about it. So thanks everybody for listening in, and we'll see you in the next one.
appreciate you guys. We'll see you.